Greetings. I'm Michael Reed Trice, and this is the Religica Theoloab. The Theolab is a place where spiritual pathways, religious traditions, and indigenous wisdom meet some of the challenges of our everyday lives and world. Blogs, podcasts, resources, and increasingly, conversations in local communities meet here. Like any laboratory, with hundreds of podcasts, blogs, and resources, this is a place of mixing ideas, of finding solutions, and seeking wisdom. In the past 2 years, the Religica Theoloab reached over 1 million people with stories, audio and video, that seek to connect us and to reassure us. With all the pain in our world, we all can recognize deeper values that shape us. Did you know, across belief systems, these values rise from far back, way back in time, before our families, our communities, love, justice, truth, the virtues of society, beauty, equitability, the importance of story, the nature of creativity, and more. And where we see current distrust and pain, we still have a way, together, to deeper visible unity in the world. And this laboratory is about seeking that unity. The Religica Theoloab is a collection of students, faculty, friends, and you. I created it in 2018 and brought the faculty laboratory with me today, where I serve as director at the Center for Religious Wisdom and World Affairs and as a constructive theologian at Seattle University. I encourage you to take a look at the Religica Theoloab and to visit us at the Center for Religious Wisdom and World Affairs as well at www.seattleu.edu/the center. Thank you. Michael Reed Trice with Religica, and in cooperation with the Center for Religious Wisdom and World Affairs at STM Seattle University. Today I am speaking with Farid Ahmed, who was in the Al-Noor Mosque on March 15, 2019, when the mosque was attacked and 51 people were murdered. Among those killed was Mr. Ahmed's wife, Husna. Friends, this is an important story, a journey, for what Mr. Ahmed calls an interior revolution. We're discussing loss and return, and how violence in our communities is never the final word. In his own words, take a listen.
My name is Farid Ahmed. I'm very humbled by being here. And I'm basically a family man. Was born in Bangladesh in 1962 and then moved to New Zealand in 1988. And then I had a wife. She is no longer here. Have a daughter, and she is 16. And for my living, I have been practicing as a homeopath. I studied in New Zealand. My original study was mechanical engineering, but I never practiced that. And my other part, a great deal of work is voluntary, doing those works as a passion, as a compassion. For example, for last 21 plus years, I had been teaching children and adults in Al-Noor Mosque. My wife and I had a Sunday class, and also I had been helping the mosque sometimes by giving Friday sermons, other talks, talks in gatherings, and also talks in building bridges between non-Muslim and Muslim audiences, and also have been sort of working as an opinion leader in my community. I almost know, older people from my community. So if anything happens, they call me for consultation. I do homeopathy for my living, but I do lots of other stuff, voluntary basis, because of my compassion. And since 15th of March, my role has been bigger. 15th of March, I lost my wife along with 51 people. And since then, I have been also speaking in New Zealand and also in international conferences. And since then, I have decided to be active in peace advocacy. So this is basically my role.
Farid, you mentioned on 15th of March 2019 at Al Noor Mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, as the site of that latest shooting, and that 51 people had died either from there or from the Linwood Islamic Center. The mosque reopens on March 23rd, and I'm very sorry to hear the loss of your wife, Husna. What has this been like for you as a journey before and after with someone who's so committed to their community? How are you?
I would say I'm well, thank you. And before 15th of March, things, religious activities, I was doing well. But after 15th of March, I would say that I'm more committed, and I have decided to be more active. As you know, that, I'm confined in wheelchair since 1998. And it was an unfortunate incident. I was a pedestrian, a drunk driver, he just drove over me. So my condition was very, very bad. So since then, yes, I survived, but with disability. So as a permanent paraplegic, my movement is limited. My energy and ability is limited. But compared to before 15th of March and after 15th of March, after 15th of March, I'm more active and I'm putting myself out there as much as I can, because after 15th of March, I strongly believe that I have to play a role for a change for better. I should not be shaken by somebody else's wrong action. I have a right to continue doing good action, and I have to exercise my right for better, for good.
I wonder if in popular ways we think that grief has a way of creating lamentation that slows us down. But this has not been your experience that I'm hearing. Grief can be a creative energizer that's aligned to our values, to our faith. What is it that inspires you? Are you even, I should say, a little surprised by how active you've become in the ways you described, as a change maker, as a bridge builder, as an opinionator, as you've mentioned?
Yes, I'm surprised, because probably I was underestimating myself before. Probably I was depending more on my wife, and I had a wrong notion that I had to be more dependent on her. After 15th of March, I discovered that I was wrong. I had lots of energy I need to use. I have lots of blessing given by God that I need to appreciate, and I need to, use them for greater good. And yes, I was surprised the amount of activities I could do after 15th of March. I could not even imagine that I would do. So, for example, the moment I hear that she was dead, it was a terrible moment. I thought that the world was shrinking for me. I thought that the land, the ground under my wheelchair was, moving away, and that horrible moments continued for 2-3 seconds. I quickly remembered my God, and I had the thought in my mind that I should surrender, to my God about my past, present, and future. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm not here to be broken down. And then that feeling was a kind of revolution inside me. I quickly regained my balance. I quickly regained my, thinking. And then I started feeling, the pain. And when I started feeling the pain, I thought it is working. Because, in medical science, when you are numb, something is wrong. But when you are feeling the pain, that means your cells are active now. That's why they feel the pain. So that pain was, so terrible. And then again, within few seconds, I question myself that why are you feeling the pain? Because, you have some duty to do. And then, in according to Islamic tradition, whatever we need to say when someone passes away, that came to my mind, and we just say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And the meaning is, to Allah we belong, and to Allah we return. So in other words, I came to this world from Allah, and one day I have to go back to Him. Today was the time for my wife. Maybe another day it will be time for me. So this is natural. I had to accept, and that was the, kicking. It calmed me down more. And then after a few seconds, everything was going very fast. Human weakness. The human weakness came to my mind, and it told me that, Farid, how are you going to survive? Because, you are on wheelchair. You had been depending on your wife a lot. You have a daughter to look after now. It's going to be more responsibility on you. How are you going to survive? Then again, the answer came to my mind. I just remembered a beautiful verse from the Quran, from a story of Jacob, Prophet Jacob. When Prophet Jacob heard the bad news about his son Joseph, 10 brothers came to him and said, he was eaten by a wolf. Then he was grieving, and in his grief, one thing he said, "Fasabrun Jamil." He said, I choose the patience without complaint. And that came to my mind, that today I will choose the same thing. I will not complain. What are meant to happen, happen. I will not complain, and I'll look positive.
Is that what healing has looked like for you then? Healing is a form of revolution?
I would say so. The word victim you mentioned is very, very interesting because it resonates me. I thought that if I was grieving, that would victimize me. If I was angry, then that would victimize me. If I lost the peace of mind inside me because of somebody else's wrongdoing, then I am imprisoning my heart and soul. Why should I do that? Why should I do that? My wife, she did not, die as a thief. She did not die as a robber. She was a hero. She was peaceful. She was doing peaceful things. So I should be celebrating that she had died in a most honorable way because she did not do anything wrong. So instead of becoming happy and celebrating, if I was, breaking myself with grief and anger, that means I had chosen to victimize myself. So I was very quickly aware, right from the beginning. And when he was shooting and I was hiding behind the mosque, every shot, the sound of the shot was, I felt that it was going through my own heart. But I was calm. I did not panic because my heart was saying that, Farid, you should feel sympathy for the guy because he is the victim, because he has taken the wrong path. And if he had the least amount of understanding as you have, Farid, he would not have taken that horrible path. So he is the victim, not you. He should be the sorry one, not you.
Has your response been the response of many others in the mosque? Have you found that that's true, or maybe there have been a number of different kinds of responses that have come through on the other side of this attack?
My response was the first response, the first one, because I was the first one who found out about my wife's death an hour after the shooting. But for rest of others, they had to wait for 2.5 days to 3 days. So they were not sure whether their loved ones were alive or injured, they were not sure. So they could not make any response. So I had the opportunity to hear about the painful news, and at the same time, I had the opportunity to set the tone for the rest.
What was a surprising story for you, or maybe even a heartwarming story for you of a response that surprised you from the community?
First day, I did not realize much because, after the shooting, I was waiting for a while on the road, gave few interviews with the media, and then I got the message that my wife was gone. I came home, consoled my daughter, and then until 11 at night, my house was, full of visitors. Some of them were scared, some of them were angry, some of them were, confused. So, I had to counsel them until 11. At some stage, my living room had about 56 people sitting on the floor. I was counseling them, and that helped me too. Because those people, they used to come to my class, or some of them, I was their marriage celebrant, some of them my neighbor, so they came to me, and they were crying. They were crying so much. And they were crying for my wife because my wife had so much to do with their life. Mm-hmm. But I took the role of counseling, and I was giving them reasons after reasons from 7 to 11, 4 hours, intense, talking. And after 11, I said, okay, probably you should go home and allow me to talk to my daughter again.
Yes, yeah.
So then, I talked to my daughter until 2 o'clock at night. So we had a good meeting, and I had a couple of our relatives also. So we had a good meeting, we had a good discussions, and we basically decided a couple of things. The first thing was that we would not be broken down. We would turn the grief into energy. So that was, our agreement. And the second agreement was, we discussed openly that how should we feel towards the gunman. And, we discussed a lot about it. And the answer was that we would feel sympathetic towards him rather than angry, because the level of understanding and compassion we had and the love for others we had, we thought that he did not have, for some reason, something went wrong in his life. So we decided that we would not support his wrong action, but as a human being, we would call him human brother, and we would pray for him. We would show sympathy for him. We would forgive him, and we would, say kind words towards him. So those two decisions, we made at that night. So the question you had that, how I was, did I feel about the community response? The community response I saw in the next morning. The whole night, I had all, telephone I did not answer. It was too much overwhelming. The night, I used for prayer and to be able to cry, to God for the, peace in my mind. So basically the whole night I dedicated on that because it was so much pain and so much unrest in my heart. By morning, my heart was peaceful. And then I decided to start receiving the call. The phone calls were, whole night it was kind of, but I supposed to say that I decided to, receive the call and talking to people. At night, I didn't want to because it was too much and overwhelming. So in the morning, because, after lots of prayers at night, I really felt, my heart was settled. I had peace, and I had emotional, mental energy to interact. That was my first experience, that how community was feeling, about us. And then when I went out of my house, oh my God, the flowers were everywhere. On the, light post, big posters, "We love you."
Yeah. How does that make you feel?
It made me feel very much loved. It made me feel that we were not alone, and it gave tremendous support. I was not sure about that. I did not honestly expect that the whole New Zealand community, the city will be like this. And then, then I started, getting news, in my phone that it was happening everywhere in New Zealand. This is the story, because it had united everyone.
You mentioned also your daughter, and I'd like to ask about her, because we see across the world so many who are in a generation younger than both of us who experience tremendous loss. In your daughter's case, that of her mother and your wife. How would you clarify how she or her generation in the mosque are handling this or seeing it? Is this a shared view of the one you have, or do you think they're seeing it a little differently as well?
If I start with my daughter, I'm very pleased that she is a sympathetic one. I have not noticed even a trace of anger in her. The moment she heard the news, she cried. She felt sad. We shared the sadness, but she was not at all. As far as the other young people I see, I have not come across anyone who is reacting with anger. Some of them are still sad. Some of them they have bounced back very quickly. And as you know, when any calamity happens, people become divided into three groups in terms of reaction. The first group, only few people you can count, and these people, they bounce back very, very quickly, and they start showing the direction to other people. And the second group, in terms of reaction, they are the vast majority people, get confused, sad, and they wait for the direction. And once they get the direction from some leaders, then they join them. And the third group are weak and vulnerable, emotionally weak, mentally weak, and those people take little longer.
People have a critical role, don't they, in the health and well-being of their community? Has this taught you or convinced you more that that's a truth?
In terms of healing, the biggest contributor for healing is the spiritual side, the faith. I would say that is the foundation. And once you have the foundation for a good house, then on that foundation you can build walls and roofs and windows and doors, etc. But if the foundation is weak, then it will be a palace built in the sea beach with sand. Big foundation, no foundation, it will collapse anytime. The faith-based healing started right from the beginning. So as I mentioned that after a few hours, I was giving people counseling, and that counseling was based on our faith. Mm-hmm. I was explaining to them that this is not a new situation. Even it happened to great prophets. It happens for a reason, and it happens to educate us, mm-hmm. to purify us, to motivate us for doing good, so these are the things we need to do, blah, blah, blah.
What is the spiritual practice after all of this that was important to you before, but that has become a part of a pilgrimage even for you that's new?
The spiritual practice, I would say that before I gave lots of lectures about patience, lots of lectures that Allah has promised that if we say that we are believer, then He would test us. He would test us to see that what we say, we really mean that through our actions, through our feelings, through our thinking. I gave lots of talks about it, but that was my talk, not practice. After what happened, then I had two options. One, to practice what I preached, or not to practice. So I was determined that what I had been teaching to so many young people about peace, love, and compassion, I thought that that incident was my chance to practice it. So I had that chance, and I'm so glad that I did it. And it seems when calamity comes, it seems it is too hard, it is unbearable. But with my experience, I found, no, it is bearable. There is a verse in the Quran, it says, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa usaha. God does not put any burden on you or on anyone that you cannot bear. So God tests us, but at the same time, God gives us the ability to deal with it. And through my experience, I found that was true.
Your story, what you're saying, your experiences can assist a number of people who unfortunately are going to experience and be on the other side of attacks, not unlike your own, if past is precedent in the future, I'm sorry to say. But there's something about the courageous revolution in oneself in spiritual practice that needs to be said to others. Someone will listen to this who in the first 24 to 48 hours after an attack is looking for some form of resource that they can hear, some voice of hope. What would you tell that person?
I would say don't give up and do not surrender to the wrong things. It is your right to have peace in your heart. It is your right to stay in the righteousness. Do not give up in violence. You have been working whole your life to please your God, to stay in the righteousness. Do not allow some bad people's bad actions to make you giving up your own values and your own practice. Only one way we can maintain our righteousness is if anyone do bad to us, in return we should do good to them. In the Quran it says, Idfa billati hi ahsan. If anyone does evil to you, in return, you do the honorable thing. You do best. If anyone gives you hate, you give love. If anyone give you violence, you give peace. Because this is your value, this is your belief, and stick to that.
You are listening to Religica. Check us out at religica.org and follow us on Facebook.